calling for a real public outcry. And we want everyone to know how serious it really is. So now what we would like for you to do is take the time out and tell all of your families and friends to come to this very, very special public broadcast. We're streaming live on Facebook. We want the whole world to know what's happening here in the state of Louisiana. It's time, people. It's time for a public outcry. So go and share with all of your family, your friends, your neighbors, everybody you know, and tell them to tune into this broadcast tonight. We're Louisiana United International. We are a civil, constitutional, human rights organization here in the state of Louisiana. It is the boiling point for predatory policing, and we have launched a campaign, and we're saying that we're not going to tolerate this type of treatment anymore. So we're calling for everyone to join up with us and support this movement to expose this type of injustice, that where people are dying, families are suffering and being destroyed, people are living in torment and fear. So we got a real good audience here tonight, and some very special guests that is going to share about the breaking news story that just happened here in the state of Louisiana, where a man was murdered. None other than Ronald Green was murdered on video. You know, we're a grassroots organization, and we started this grassroots campaign addressing criminal law enforcement, bullying, and extortion, you know, just abusing their powers and their authority just because they have a badge to do whatever they want to do. So please start sharing, calling people, telling them to tune into this broadcast, because this discussion tonight is something that the whole world needs to know. And you can say extra, extra, read all about it. This is a broadcast that everybody needs to know about. So we're calling on you. We're calling on you to share this with your family, your friends, your neighbors, everybody you know, to come into this broadcast right now. We have a lineup, and we're going to take our time so that we can show you the video of Ronald Green. That this video that you're about to see right now is worse than the George Floyd video that the whole world saw, where Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 26 seconds, while the whole world was watching. And the prosecutor said he didn't get up or let up. He kept it there even after George was dead. And the video that we're about to show you right now is worse than George Floyd video. So, Dr. Z, do we have that video ready? We want to go ahead and show the video while she's getting that. You know, Here it is.
Mr. Green was, to some degree, even though he had just finished leading police officers on a lengthy and a high-speed chase, his inclination at that particular point was to acquiesce to what the officers wanted.
Let me see your hands. Put your hands behind your back. Give me your fucking hand. Put your hands behind your back. Take it. Put your hands behind your back. You're about to get it again if you don't put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. I'm sorry.
What's problematic for me is that Mr. Green is now left on the ground, on his stomach, handcuffed in a prone position. And officers are trained throughout the United States that once there's a struggle of this nature, the individual's handcuffed, that you need to push him off onto his side or get him in a sitting position so you can allow that breathing to be unimpeded by his own body weight. And that didn't happen for at least, based on my calculation, 9 minutes, where Mr. Green was left alone. And then when he wasn't left alone and he tried to get over onto his side, another trooper pushed him down using his foot against the lower back and buttocks of Mr. Green. And I didn't understand that. There was absolutely no reason for that. Under no circumstances should Mr. Green have been drugged by his ankle shackles. That was malicious, sadistic, completely unnecessary. And the officer that did it's going to have to be held accountable.
Okay. We're gonna talk about this video was this incident happened on May of 2019. Robert.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I would like to for you to come on in and tell the people about the troopers that was involved in this incident.
Well, if in an itemization of the troopers, I think most of the names are probably known by now. Chris Hollingsworth was one who was early on identified to me as one who had turned off the body cam, and I actually got first told about that in June of 2019, and I confirmed with some other sources that I felt were trustworthy for that to be the case, so I made a public records request for his disciplinary file, and all that was in there was a traffic accident from 12 years back in 2009, or about 10 years back. And so I decided to get very specific because I was just generic in the initial request. And I said, look, what I'm looking for is evidence that any of the following LSP troopers turned off their body cam in the arrest and apprehension of Ronald Green on or about May the 10th of 2019. And that apparently, now I want to bear in mind this public records request is being made about approximately 460 days after the incident. Apparently, I guess it was going to become known that, hey, we're not going to be able to carry this on anymore. And so 4 days later, Colonel Reeves, the then Colonel of State Police, issued Trooper Hollingsworth a letter of intent to terminate. And then later that same day, he died in a one-vehicle accident, crashing into a guardrail, from what I understand. Most folk considered it was probably a suicide. However, it is important to note that the coroner officially classified it as an accident. So that's Chris Hollingsworth. We can move on to Gary York. I'm sorry, I said Gary. Corey. I worked with him. I worked with a Gary York many years ago. So Corey York. Now he was involved in this, but he was also involved in a separate incident that I think probably most on here are familiar with, and that being Aaron Bowman. So he was actually arrested on I'm sorry, that's not February the 11th. I'm sorry. It may be. Forgive me if I get a few dates wrong. From what Colonel Davis just said in the press conference that he held, Corey York received a 50-hour suspension. We already knew that as a result of the Ronald Green incident. He is the one who dragged Mr. Green on the pavement after he was face down. That decision had been made by, as I understand it, the previous Colonel Reeves, and once Colonel Davis assumed the reins, I believe his commentary was that if he had been in charge, it certainly would have been more tougher than this, but that he would honor the Reeves commitment on the 50 hours. So he got a 50-hour suspension for Ronald Green. However, if I understood Colonel Davis correctly, and again, I'm fresh off of this news conference that they just did, if I heard correctly, he may have, and I'm a little reluctant to say this because it's so fresh, and I don't want to state something that's wrong, so he may have been notified of impending discipline. I'll let it go at that. With regard to the Aaron Bowman, or Bauman, is it Bowman or Bauman? The Aaron Bowman.
Aaron Bowman.
Bowman, okay. Those were the two primary troopers who were there and arrived on the scene. There are obviously others.
Well, do you have any information that was on Sergeant Floyd? Was it McRoy?
Well, no, those two, I've never seen anything referenced. I can tell you that Captain John Peters, which that's unheard of from what I'm told. It's absolutely unheard of for the captain to wind up showing up on the scene, and from what I understand, he lives quite a distance away. Captain Peters, I have been told, has been transferred to a division of state police called TESS. Not sure what that's an acronym for. I had pulled it up the other day, but that's basically much more of an administrative role, not directly involved in the type of responsibilities that he had prior to that. So,
Robert, let's back up for a minute on Captain Peters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In the public records request, a part of the narrative, it was stating that he was tall.
Yeah, I'm looking at that now. Uh-huh.
Could you elaborate on that for a minute? Because see, this is our concern, that the captain was called to the scene.
Yeah, I'm looking for that part. Actually, I think what I'm looking at, and you can correct me if you have something other than mine, I'm looking at the sheriff's call out reporting all the ones referenced. Let me go back and check on the line items and see, because they're referencing calling the ambulatory, that's Pafford, and that was en route at 1:08 a.m. Let me just see. LSP called, and they were in pursuit. Now that occurred. Well, this thing says 3:42, but that's got to be after the fact. So I don't know the exact time that Peters may have been called out, because, like I said, from what I've been told, that's unheard of for a captain to wind up showing up. But I guess the seriousness of what had transpired here caused everybody to be there in the chain of command. So
right, because I'm looking at some of the sergeant, lieutenant, captain,
everybody wound up there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It started as just Corey York and Chris Hollingsworth, and they requested the sheriff's backup, and that's what I was reading from, was all of the line items of what took place at what times from the sheriff's actual call-out sheet. But Peters was there. We know that.
Well, what I want the public to know, the world to know, is that these were high-ranking officers.
Right.
And they were all there. Now, can you tell the people, before I have Mr. Franklin come on, was he already dead before he got to the hospital?
Well, it depends on which version you want to go with. They initially said that he died en route to the hospital, which would technically mean, yes, he was dead prior to the arrival at the hospital. Now there seems to be some belief that he was dead even before he was placed into the ambulance. So, no, except for the ones that were there, only they know what the situation really was, and there have been conflicting reports on when he actually died. So there's no way I can say.
Could you also say what the doctor said in regards to the coroner's report?
Well, the doctor said that when he arrived, the report was, as everyone knows, that he died upon impact from a car crash. But he said the taser barbs in the lower part of his back and some other items that he itemized just caused it, and I quote, "It doesn't add up," unquote.
Wow. Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
Randy, are you there? Let's bring on Randy Franklin.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, Randy. I know you have had the opportunity to look at the video. But could you tell the world, what is it that we're really dealing with here?
Well, I watched the video and I read the police reports, and it I believe he was dead at scene. What's really bad about this is what you stated before. After they beat him to death, the real video is 46 minutes. After they beat him to death, they had such a arrogant and no give a shit attitude that they called their supervisors to the scene to help them cover up this crime. I say that they helped them cover up this crime because when they got to the scene, the car wasn't wrecked, and he didn't hit a tree. And with their supervisors and the detectives there, they put this narrative together that he had hit a tree and died upon impact, which lets me believe he died at scene while they were beating him to death. I also watched the video, and I agree with that use of force expert, but at no time did I see Mr. Floyd resisting. I mean, you're asking for my hands while you're tasing me at the same time. And I would like to give you my hand, but if I'm being tasered, it makes you ball up in a knot. So I can't hand you my hand while you're tasering me. That's just a fact of being tasered. So I'm face down and being tasered, and the whole time, because police know that when they want to beat you to death, they will just keep yelling, stop resisting, while they keep punching you when you're not resisting at all. And this video clearly shows that he wasn't resisting. You can see his hands in the air. And as they try to get his other hand, which they just have to reach down and get it, they just keep tasing him. And the cover up, this is so blatant, and this is why police reform is so hard. It's because when the officers on the street know that their supervisors will cover a murder up for them, cover it up, that they can do this stuff. So after they beat him to death, they called it. And I was reading Mr. Let me get his name right, Ripton's report. And he stated that once they got him in cuffs, they requested the ambulance because it was apparent that he needed medical treatment. He was bleeding from the head. So the narrative of he died of a heart attack or anything else is not realistic when it's in a police report. And his exact words were, apparently he needs he said, definitely he needs medical attention, medical assistance, because he was bleeding from a head wound. So they were just punching him to death. And it shows you how out of control Mr. York was, who's now been arrested. That even after Mr. Floyd was on the ground, he couldn't get the anger out of him, that he had to go grab his feet and drag him face down. And there was no call for it at all. It was malicious. That itself is a crime.
Randy, could you hold up 1 minute? Dr. Z, while Randy finish up, can you get that picture of his head?
Okay, I'll get that, but we need to explain to our audience. Well, first of all, we're going to have Mr. Franklin introduce himself and share his credentials with our audience, because while he's part of our regular broadcast, a lot of people haven't met him yet. And then also I need to explain that this picture is very graphic, so if you're sensitive to such matters, you may want to step away from the screen for momentarily. So Mr. Franklin, if you could just introduce yourself, and then I'll bring that picture up.
Yes, I'm sorry. I like everyone else, I try to keep my emotions down. My name is Randy Franklin. I'm a 30-year LAPD former sergeant. I spent 30 years on the streets of Los Angeles. And I have joined Louisiana United because of their great work in trying to stop predatory policing in Louisiana. So I have lent my expertise. I'm sorry. When I read reports, I try to go through reports to find out the truthfulness of the report, because I've read police reports for those 30 years as a supervisor in a watch command.
Thank you, Randy. And you are very, very thorough. And without your help, we would not be dealing with, you asked the right questions. I have, we know that there is hope when we have people like you a part of our team to bring a solution and put a stop to this type of injustice. Dr. Z, before Randy go on, I have some questions for you, Randy. But before you go on, Dr. Z, can you show that picture?
Yes.
Wow. Wow. It's very graphic and it's horrific, people, that it's obvious that this man was beat to death on video. I want Randy to go back and talk a little bit more about the cover-up. Randy, why was this so important to them that the public did not see the video? And they held the video for 2 years.
No, it's a murder. You actually saw a murder on tape. The supervisors that was called out saw their officers murder an individual on tape. Now you have to cover up this murder. So you get the right people to cover up this murder. Like York getting a 2-day suspension. I believe he got that because you called the right people in. Colonel Reed came in because I believe he was compromised because his son had just committed a manslaughter murder. So if you have a supervisor compromised, and hopefully his son will be held for that murder too, those 2 kids he killed. So you got a supervisor, you have a compromise, who you get to do the investigation. But it didn't just stop with the police department. It had to go to the district attorney office, and I hear all the way up to the governor, who covered up this murder. Because there's no reason for an investigation of this. I mean, you have all the evidence in front of you. You have the police actually lying in their report about what actually happened to Mr. Green. He did not hit a tree. So that's your first indication that these officers are now starting to lie with the help of their supervisors.
Wow.
So their supervisors helped them cover up this murder. And then they gave it to the DA, and we got our officers murdering him on tape. What are we supposed to do? Well, we're not going to release the video. We're not going to charge them. In fact, they released these murderers back into the community for 2 years.
Wow.
Which war harm to the citizens of Louisiana when they should have been taken into custody, not given a vacation paid leave, which we'll talk about down the road. But this is systemic, and this is what I tell people all the time. Whenever the police see something on their body cameras that they need to cover up, this is the worst blatant case I've seen of it going all the way up to the governor's office. And he's not assigning a special prosecutor or attorney general of the state of Louisiana to come down 2 years ago and take these officers into custody. So, and if you read this report, everywhere down the road, you see a cover up, you see a lie. He died at that scene. Even in Mr. Ripper's report, he said they got the word from the ambulance that he was dead. Now, if we want to know when he died, all we got to do is get the ambulance when they got on scene, because they took his pulse. So we'll know when we get the information from the ambulance that responded. When they put him in the ambulance, did he have a pulse? Or he didn't, or he had a fake pulse. And he was dying when they put him in the ambulance. So they went a block and he died. So we don't know that until we get their report from the ambulance that showed up. And they will have it documented when he died exactly. Or if he was dead at scene. Now, I've been on tons of cases where people have died on scene, or we put them in the ambulance on their way to the hospital. But this is just from the sergeant to the lieutenant to the captain. When they got on scene, they knew Mr. Green was dead. And then they start fabricating stories to cover their ass. And you can see that maybe it's a tight-knit community. But my God, it left there. It went to the chief. It went from the chief to the district attorney, from the district attorney to the governor. All the way down the line, it shows you the systemic. Well, I was just saying that the accountability wasn't there for anyone, and that emboldened police. And that's why Mr. York went back on the street, emboldened that he just beat a man to death and he got 2 days suspension. And he now arrested. One officer was arrested, the other was dead. I tell you all the time, if you follow these officers, you will find out that they are clipped and they are used to beating officers. I mean, beating individuals. I mean, they were so emboldened that they text each other to congratulate each other for beating Mr. Green to death.
Wow. Wow, Randy, hold up for a minute. I really would want give Robert the opportunity to come in and introduce himself. But the cover up, to me, the cover up is the worst thing. When we have our elected officials, when you say that it went all the way up to the governor, and if not the attorney general, and for 2 years, and if my understanding that was a 2019 was an election year for the governorship, which was this incident happened in May, and the election was for November, and it was covered up while we had a serious election going on. And these videos, this incident was covered up. Lauren, are you there? I want to have Lauren come in, and she wants to share with us how, because she was like, why is nothing being done about this? And I believe one of the reasons why it was covered up, Lauren, is because, at that time, the whole George Floyd stuff was all out, and people were protesting and rallying and, taking the streets because of, the death of George Floyd that happened in broad open daylight. So it could be that they didn't want that to happen here in Louisiana. Go ahead, Lauren, take your time and share with us what you want us to know.
I think it could be that they didn't want another George Floyd situation to happen, but I also think it could be a lot of things. I'm sorry, I'm very emotional about the whole subject. I think at the end of the day, it's people covering their butts. It's people wanting to go home to their family after taking someone else's family away. It's very sad. I did want to quote something that Mr. Green's mother said. She said, "They murdered him. It was set out. It was planned." Green's mother, Mona Hardin, said Wednesday, "He didn't have a chance. Ronnie didn't have a chance. He wasn't going to live to tell about it." That should make your blood boil. These police officers get to go home to their family, everybody, but, they get to work there years afterwards, but these people don't get to see their families after that day. And, at the end of the day, most of us, when we have family members die, we get, the satisfaction of at least knowing what happened. We get to lay their burial knowing that, how it happened, no suspense, but this was covered. People lied about it. It's the whole situation is just really sad.
Miss Belinda, if we can have an introduction of Miss Hales.
I am one of the founders of the Project Revolution, which is a nonprofit for the fight of the betterment of humanity.
Yes. Wow. You're right, Lauren, that, it's very emotional, it's sickening, it's, as a mother, I'm living in fear for my children, for myself, because what they did can happen to anyone.
Anyone.
And then the worst part is the cover up.
Well, Ms. Brown, we keep talking like the cover has stopped. It has not. They did not give people under the video. The video was leaked. So it ain't like they gave you the video saying, we have now given you the video because we have come to a conclusion. Remember, this video was leaked. So the cover up hasn't stopped. It's still going on. Mm-hmm. No one has come out and told you to this day that, we released the video.
Randy, we just got some updated news from Robert, and Robert, we're going to give him an opportunity to introduce himself too, and tell us who he. Robert watched the press release from the Colonel Davis, that I've been, that's was the newly appointed colonel right after this incident. Robert, why don't you fill us in on that?
Sure, I'll be happy to. And I'm Robert Burns. I have a video blog called Sound Off Louisiana, and it's designed to basically, and you can see I'm adjusting the camera now, let folks sound off on any state governmental issue of concern to them. I formed the blog 6 years ago, and to be frank with you, I thought I would be covering things like, well, this employee got terminated and didn't think it was fair, and they would have an opportunity to sound off. Or, a board didn't do this or a commission didn't do that. I will be honest, I never in a million years thought that the blog would end up being an avenue to sound off about people within a state agency engaging in this type of conduct. But it happened, and so, I provide the avenue to do that, so I call it Sound Off Louisiana. And on to the development today at approximately 5:30, and I think it was kind of hastily called together. And he admitted that, Colonel Davis gave appreciation to all of the press for coming in on such short notice, but they made a decision today, state police did, to release the entirety of all video that they have. I think part of the rationale for that, and I think that Colonel Davis alluded to it, is that they don't believe that that part that was released is reflective of the totality of what all happened that night. So now, and I went and checked, WAFB has it posted, and it's about 9 different video links. But now we now have access to the entirety of the different body cams worn by the different officers. Now, what Colonel Davis stressed in that is that he reiterated that was an unauthorized leak that of the video, just as was just referenced, and he emphasized that these troopers will have their right to due process. And he said, having said that, he intends to take swift action when wrongdoing is identified, and he intends to hold everyone, including himself, accountable for their actions. Now, he had to avoid questions about the specificity of any part of the investigation because of the fact that it's ongoing, and he didn't really address the cover-up issue. One of the reporters asked about that, and I believe, in fact I know, he said that some of those that were involved are now retired, and he didn't name Colonel Reeves by name, but that is one retirement. His former chief of staff, Robert Brown, is also now retired, and Lieutenant Colonel Noel, who was the chief of staff under Reeves, while he's not retired, he has moved over to the Gaming Enforcement Division of State Police. I feel certain I heard Colonel Davis say that those who have retired have not been receptive to his overtures of communication. I don't want to misquote him, but I think I'm pretty close. And forgive me, this has all happened within the last hour, so I'm having to try to remember things on the fly. Oh, and yeah, I mentioned that all of the videos been released, and the links are available to see everything that happened, or everything, all the video they have. I'll put it that way.
Yes, Robert. When he's saying that, it just make me wonder, Randy, when you think about that, if it had not been leaked out, would we be at, day before yesterday is when the video, the leak came out, and now a day or so later, the whole entire video comes out. So what do you think about that, Randy?
Well, they're doing a dance. Mm-hmm. A dance of cover-up. Remember this, murder has no statute of limitation. No matter where you go, or you transfer, or you retire, murder has no statute of limitation. Just because you left your job doesn't mean you get to say, okay, I'll wash my hands of it. You do not. If Colonel Davis is saying that he's looking to indict, because I believe this should be taken out of, with all the cover-up and lies, that it should be taken out of their hands and given to a state attorney general and given to the FBI for civil rights violations. And no matter where these officers go, they should be tracked down because they did commit a murder. There's no way Mr. Green can have those injuries to his face unless they got him standing up boxing with these officers, which I did not see. I saw them drag him out the car on what they showed and him hit the ground. Mm-hmm. So there's no way he should have those contusions all over his face, his hands, unless they ball up their fists and beat this man to death. Everyone keeps saying, everyone keeps saying they left their job or they retired, they moved on. That has nothing to do with this murder. We should go get those policemen. We should get the supervisors that covered up this crime. Because what Colonel Davis did not address, Mr. Green did not hit a tree. That's a lie right there. So while Colonel Davis tried to soft shoe you down the road as if he's doing something, this immediately, for 2 years, they had time to investigate this. And because of this video leak, they're talking about now they're going to investigate it. And he should be 2 years down the road right now. But now he's saying, I just started to investigate. What, yesterday?
Wow. And you know, that's what I'm trying to keep my passion down. I'm like Lauren, you know, my blood is boiling because of the fact that there's so much that can be said about this. You know, I'm very disturbed. I'm at the point where, you know, my words are just shaking to come out because of the fact that when you think about every single person, you know, all the way up to the governor's office and down, that touch, that note, that covered it up.
Let me put it this way.
Needs
Suppose, suppose 6 of us beat a policeman up, and we beat him to death, and a crowd came around and cheered us on for beating him to death. And then while we had that policeman unconscious, we grabbed that policeman's feet and we drug that policeman face down along the ground. They will indict every single person at that scene will be indicted murder.
Yes.
In that murder.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Randy. And like you said, they got to go home and go back to work the next day, you know.
Exactly.
Dr. Z.
Yes, we have our guest, Mr. J.L. Lazoo, and we have Mr. Floyd, who's joined us, and Mr. Lazoo is pressed for time, so I just thought you should know if you want to have him come in.
Absolutely, because he have another engagement. I thank you so much, JL. Why don't you go right ahead and weigh in on this and let us know, you know, we need some solutions. We need to know that, you know, we can't live this way.
Cannot, absolutely not. Yeah, you're right. Solutions is the key because once you understand what the problem is and who's actually the cause of the problem, that's just the first step. But now you got to be in a position where you can prevent that from occurring again. And that's why we need a solution to solve this without having to face it once again. So a lot has to do with the politics that's taking place in the state of Louisiana. And as you can know that when you think about the predatory policing that's taking place around the country that's you know, seeking to hunt down African Americans, a lot of them are members of the GOP. But even though they may be members of the GOP, that is working with them to allow them to be, you know, in this situation where they can actually do these heinous things against us. And then the other culprit is the Democratic Party because they're the ones that actually uphold and allow them to continue to do that because they don't produce any serious legislation or programs to prevent them from continuing to do that. And the irony is this. So just think of this in this perspective. This is not happening to anyone but African Americans at this great level of atrocities. And that's critical because if everyone else is facing the same type of atrocities that we are, a solution would have already occurred years ago. But it doesn't because it doesn't affect their children. And that's the irony that we're facing. And it's hard for a lot of people to swallow, but that's just reality. And until we understand this, and we understand that we have the ability to make changes on our own, just like what's happening out here with Louisiana United International, who's actually taken these steps to be sure that we're informed and be sure that there's a way to create some accountability for what's taking place. Then if this organization can take us this far, then we surely can take even further to make sure that it doesn't occur again. And that is all based on how we elect our officials. And there has to be better officials coming out of these parties. You know, this party has been so poisonous to African Americans. We run to the Democratic Party because we're so connected to it, you know, for many, many years, but they don't solve our problems.
Can you give us an introduction of yourself, Mr. Lazoo?
Yeah, my name is J.L. Lazoo, and I'm working on a campaign right now for a candidate that's actually running in Louisiana to replace the governor that you just talked about in this case, replacing him. And our candidate is an African American, And just like we had an African American president in 2008 and 2012, it's time to have a African American governor in 2023 in Louisiana, so we can solve this problem.
Thank you, Mr. JL. Thank you so much, buddy. You're absolutely right. We got to have solutions now. And that's what it all boils down to. You know, I know that we're talking about the cover up. We're talking about how the politics get involved with this. You know, who's going to cover, you know, each other's back. You know, one of the things I was hoping that Robert can come back and say that, you know, the history of our governor and law enforcement. Robert, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Certainly, and I actually have this on video, and when I do this sound off feature, I will include it. During one of the debates, he stressed that, he said, my father's a sheriff, grandfather's a sheriff, my brother's a sheriff, so he is from a family of sheriffs. And his brother is a sheriff in Tangipahoa Parish. You know, I guess he kind of broke from the fold, so to speak, in that he didn't, you know, pursue a law enforcement career and became a lawyer and then became a representative and, of course, is now governor. But make no mistake, his father and his grandfather were very well-known sheriffs from Tangipahoa Parish. So he comes from a, and you know, a lot of times people don't really realize that. They just see Governor Edwards and it's an isolated that, well, here he is, you know. But his whole family is law enforcement, and specifically their sheriffs.
So there is no doubt in my mind that he should have known better. You know, he should have known better than to cover this up for 2 years. People, listen. You know, to me, you know, all of these people, the officers, they violated their oath of office that they swore to. They betrayed the public trust when they covered this up.
Well, and
Robert, you know, we're coming up on the end of our broadcast before we have a few more, you know, some very important comments and announcements to make. But Robert, is there anything else? Randy, is there anything else? Lauren, you know, I was hoping that Pastor Derek was able to come on. I don't see him out there.
Yeah, I have something to say.
Go ahead, Randy.
For Mrs. JL, yes, we do need the vote. We really do. And it occurs, as I'll tell you, it occurs to everyone. African Americans, we get more publicity about the deaths when we get beat to death on video all the time. I believe the way to do it is that if you want accountability, you have to start booking supervisors. You have to arrest them because they're the ones, for the line officers on the street, that let them get away with murder like they did this time. And for the governor, listen, he could be from a law enforcement family, but what type of law enforcement family did he come from is the question. I mean, you gotta say, if his grandfather and great-grandfathers were back in the early 1900s all the way up to the 60s and 70s, they could have been just like these police. We don't know. I mean, it's great to run on a law enforcement background, that your family is law enforcement. But if the governor knew about this video and covered it up, it shows you what type of law enforcement, what side he's going to when you talk about law enforcement. He's for the policemen, but he's not for his constituents. His constituents who put him in office, he basically don't give a crap about them.
Wow.
You could not look at this video and say, I come from a law and order background, and I'm going to call the Attorney General, and the Attorney General's going to go down there. We have to stop letting the people who beat us investigate themselves. I don't want you to give me someone in your organization whose career and everyday income is based upon your findings. They should have been taken completely out of their hands and given to someone else. And the mere fact that Colonel Davis making a statement today is mildly interesting. The question is, how long did Colonel Davis have this investigation in front of him? And what did he do in the meantime from the time he got it till now? I don't see any indictments. I don't see any police that have been relieved of duty without pay. I don't see any arrests. So, I listen to what people say. But like Rachel and I'd say, don't watch what they say, watch what they do.
Yes, absolutely.
Nothing.
And if I could interject here, I'm Dr. Zena Crenshaw-Logo, Assistant Chief of Operations for Louisiana United International and part-time producer of these broadcasts. And we had neglected to specify Governor John Bel Edwards, Louisiana governor. And we don't have a lot of detail about, his family and their law enforcement career and the nature of it. But what we have is a governor who at this point, 2 situations, he has erred on the side of protecting law enforcement. He has erred on the side of protecting government actors who are involved in, murderous conduct to the detriment of his constituents. Because these people, while they're hiding this video, they're still in the midst of the Louisiana community. They're still out there. And I just want to emphasize that our broadcast, the topic, this is the second time because, we had another menace in our midst, another killer. It was the COVID-19 virus. And how much did LUI do to try to get the governor to protect the incarcerated people of Louisiana from that killer? And what was his response? So I just wanted to emphasize that at this point, law enforcement background, perhaps they served honorably, but Governor Edwards obviously has a soft spot in his heart for these law enforcement officers, which includes the correction department of the state of Louisiana, and apparently that spot in his heart is softer than what it is for the residents of Louisiana, because he's letting a killer be in our midst.
Yes, and that deadly coronavirus, I know for a fact we had over 400,000 people contract the virus, and then over 10,000 people, died from the virus. How many of those people were prisoners that their lives could have been saved? We don't know. We don't know. So we do know that the governor mismanaged the whole, process of the COVID-19 because he had the executive powers to order or control evacuation to save people's lives, and he didn't do it. So,
And LUI tried to meet with him and tried to get the state to have this controlled evacuation. It was not a matter of just letting people out, get out of jail free, and it was to no avail. We got nowhere. They didn't even really acknowledge it. We had developed a state-of-the-art formula to orderly decarcerate, get people out of these facilities. Yes, that were not CDC compliant, and believe me, the risk is still there. There might be vaccinations and stuff, but the risk is still very much there. And hardly anyone has been released during the midst of this deadly virus. So, deadly law enforcement officers, deadly viruses, and Governor Edwards is apparently comfortable with them just circulating among the residents of Louisiana.
And especially and covering it up.
Especially black and brown people.
And Miss Belinda, can I put in a final remark, please?
Yes, go ahead.
So I was on the phone with Miss Belinda last night, and we were talking about this, and I kind of wanted to emphasize something that we were talking about. She was getting riled up, and she was talking to me and saying how she didn't want to make this personal. She was trying to take, personal beliefs out of, other beliefs. I just want to ask, like, how do you not take something like the killing of Mr. Green personal? Because it could be any of us. So it's hard to, in these situations, take your emotions out. And I just wanted to emphasize on that.
Yeah, Lauren, and thank you so much. It's really hard, and it's very hard for me. You know, it's hard for me because, like I said, the worst part of this is that, you know, watching his mother, you know, and seeing her, you know, talk about, you know, and what you just read that she said, they murdered him.
4 minutes, Ms. Belinda, 4 minutes.
Okay. All right, and I don't want to be disrespectful to you know, Mr. Hamilton that came on. I know that he wanted to talk about the cover up too, the death of his dad that they murdered and covered up and still covering up. Mr. Hampton, we're gonna have to have a part 2 because I got to have my friend Lindsay from the ACLU come in and you know, give her final comments and share, you know, why it's so important that we do this work in our community. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you everybody for having me. Like Ms. Belinda said, my name is Lindsay Douglas. I am an intake and investigations paralegal with the American Civil Liberties Union of Louisiana. And I was asked to be here today to tell you about our initiative called Justice Lab, Putting Racist Policing on Trial. So through Justice Lab, the ACLU of Louisiana is partnering with law firms and law school clinics from across the country to help represent victims of racially motivated police misconduct all over Louisiana. Our aim is to bring a wave of lawsuits against racially discriminatory policing and to make police departments accountable for every identifiable instance of unconstitutional policing. Justice Lab is unique in that we offer direct representation, and we're really open to all reports of unconstitutional policing, not only the, you know, totally horrendous and senseless ones that end in a loss of life, like Mr. Green, but the day-to-day occurrences, such as an illegal search, seizure, unlawful arrest, excessive force. I mean, even things that are egregious, of course, we're open to hearing, but we really want to shine a light on the day-to-day unconstitutional policing acts that happen. And by focusing our efforts on a single state, especially a state like Louisiana, we are, you know, really hoping that we're going to be able to test the impact that litigation has on changing police conduct, and also hopefully establish a nationwide blueprint for combating abuses. I mean, as you said, Louisiana is the best place to start this program because it is an illustration of our country's broken system. We have the largest ratio of police officers to resident of any state, and we have the highest incarceration rate in the country. While the cases we're going to be dealing with are tough, as all civil rights law is, we will send a clear message that the legal community and our society is not going to turn a blind eye to these abuses anymore. And beyond litigation, we're also asking victims who we can't represent to consider sharing their stories with the public. You know, we need to put faces to these stories, and we need to show people who is this happening to, and we need to be the voices for people who aren't here anymore. And you know, today we've been contacted by almost 300 people all over Louisiana. We have over 35 investigations, and we filed 11 cases in the past 10 weeks. You know, we're working with organizations like Louisiana United International in furthering this work around policing issues in Louisiana. And we can really only make it happen if people come forward. if you do come forward, all communications with the ACLU of Louisiana are completely confidential. And I will put our contact information in the chat, but the easiest way to get a hold of us is to call our hotline at 504-350-0100.
Say that number again, Lindsay. There it is.
504-350-0100.
Okay, we just put it on the screen. Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Awesome. Awesome. This is our cry, people, that we're calling for you now. This is a safe place. A lot of times, we don't have nowhere to turn. We don't know who to talk to, who to trust. But we're saying that we're here for you. And that's the reason why we know for a fact that we're going to put a stop to this. I want to thank all of my special guests that came on tonight in this broadcast, but most of all, we want to give all of our condolence and our sympathy to the Green family. We want you to know that we are here for you, we care, and we're not going to stop until we get justice for Ronald Green. Thank you for tuning in tonight.